Stop. If you're about to hire a vendor, hold on. Hiring the wrong vendor is one of the quickest ways to destroy a project. In the next 10 minutes, I'll share the 6 most serious project vendor mistakes and how to fix them. You'll save months of pain and thousands of dollars. Welcome to the channel. Let's dive in. We see the same thing again and again on failed IT projects. The client and vendor blaming each other for the sorry state of affairs. And sometimes it ends up in court. But it's not just in IT. This happens in construction, marketing, media, and other industries. It's the same universal pattern. To give you a heads up, here are the 6 most serious project vendor mistakes we'll be discussing. Mistake number 1, you're too vague on scope. Build me a website is not a project scope. You need to be specific. The number of pages, the content, brand design, back-end functions, to name a few. The fix is to have a clear statement of work as part of the contractual agreement with the vendor. You want to clearly state the responsibilities of the vendor, the deliverables they are to produce, the quality criteria, the timeline, acceptance criteria, anything that is out of scope, and any assumptions you've made. You might not know every single detail, but you have a clear enough direction that both you and the vendor are on the same page to avoid damaging disagreements later on. Mistake number 2, you select vendors based on price. Look, I get it, you want to save money, but lowest price can sometimes equate to low quality, and when that happens, it can cost more to rectify the problems. The fix? Instead of looking just at price, look more broadly for these 3 vendor competencies. The first is delivery. Does the vendor have the experience and expertise to do the work? Ask for case studies and customer references. The second competency is service. Is the vendor responsive to your calls and requests? And do you think you can develop a good working relationship with them? The third competency is value. Don't just look at price, but value for money. Not all vendor offerings are the same, so you can't always compare like for like. Consider creating a scorecard based around these 3 vendor competencies and use it to rate prospective vendors in a consistent way. Mistake number 3, your contract is lopsided, meaning it unfairly favors the vendor more than the client. There are 2 main problems I see with lopsided contracts. The first problem is that you're paying a vendor based on time and materials rather than outcomes. When this happens, the vendor has no incentive to get work done quickly, and what they might be tempted to do is to add more people to the project so they can charge more. So the solution here is to tie payment to outcomes and deliverables. For example, instead of paying a vendor for a team of 5 workers, you negotiate 4 milestones, where the vendor is paid 25% for the completion of each milestone. The second problem is that you're paying above market rates, and this can arise if you haven't done your market research. The solution for this is to make sure you get multiple quotations or proposals from at least 3 reputable vendors. Mistake number 4, your contract has holes. Many of us don't like reading all the fine print, but contracts are legally binding, so you need to be careful what you or your organization are signing up for. As mentioned earlier, a clear statement of work should be a part of the contractual agreement with a vendor. Many vendors have a standard contract, or in the case of larger projects, the contract is a custom agreement between you and the vendor. Either way, there are some important things to look out for. First, payment. Watch out for vendors that try to front load the payment, which means you're effectively paying for work before it's been carried out. It's far better to incentivize the completion of work or milestones. Also think about the duration of the contract. It's often more prudent to have shorter, renewable contracts rather than committing to a longer one, in case things with the vendor don't work out. Also watch out for auto-renewal clauses, where contracts just continue on and on unless you explicitly terminate them. Another important consideration is intellectual property and data. This is commercially sensitive and the vendor should not be able to use that on another project. It's also worth thinking about termination clauses in case the vendor's performance isn't up to scratch, but do ensure that any performance indicators are measurable. Also, don't forget about notice periods for termination, and last but not least, don't get locked into a contract where it's almost impossible to move to another vendor. In the case of IT, for example, you'd want to avoid vendors that don't allow data to be easily exported. Mistake number 5, you get burnt with every change. So every time you ask for a change or request for additional things on a project, the vendor either says no, or more often is the case, charges you an arm and a leg. For many projects, some change is quite normal, but you need to build that into the way you work with a vendor. Here's what you can do. Build review points into the project. This is where vendors provide drafts based on your inputs. You provide feedback, and the vendor produces a first official version. Second, have a formal change control process where every change is formally approved by you. This stops vendors making changes without your consent. As part of the contract, you can agree a formula to calculate the cost of each change based on a rate card, bill of materials, or other method. Third, include a change allowance or reserve as part of the project budget. That way, you have a buffer for routine changes. And finally, have an escalation and dispute resolution clause as part of the contract. This makes you and vendor more committed to resolving issues, rather than jumping straight to termination or litigation. Finally, mistake number 6, you don't have a structured vendor management process. If you're spending thousands, even millions of dollars with a vendor, you want to make sure you follow a process that not only helps you select the right vendors, but also builds strong working relationships over the long term. Some organizations have hundreds of vendors, and it's best practice to use a vendor management lifecycle, like you see here. Now, I'll leave a fuller explanation of the lifecycle for another video, but a lifecycle generally has several phases. The first is understand the needs and the general scope of work. The second is supplier identification, due diligence, and selection. Next comes contracts and negotiation, followed by onboarding and performance management. Then there's relationship and risk management. The final phase is contract renegotiation, exit, and termination. The key benefit of a life cycle is that you manage vendors in a clear, transparent, and consistent way. So there you have it. The 6 most serious project vendor mistakes and how to fix them. It's all about working smarter, having a clear statement of work, thinking about value rather than price, paying for outcomes rather than time and materials, checking contracts for holes, ensuring change is accommodated in the project setup, and having a structured vendor management process. Now, if you found this video useful, hit subscribe for more project management content like this. What's the biggest vendor mistake you've ever made or seen? Drop your story in the comments below.